We must make permanent the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and implement new pro-growth policies. This is the single most important economic issue of the day. This is pass-fail. If we do not renew and extend, then we will be facing an economic calamity.
Treasury Secretary nominee Scott Bessent on his confirmation hearing before the Senate Finance Committee yesterday, discussing the Trump tax cuts, tariffs, and his economic vision for the next administration. Joining me now is Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt, a member of the Senate Judiciary, Armed Services, Commerce, and the Joint Economic Committee. Senator, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to be with you, Maria.
I want to get your take on how these hearings are going. I know that you questioned Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi, Transportation Secretary nominee Sean Duffy, Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth. You will also question Commerce Secretary pick Howard Lutnick. That hearing moved due to paperwork delays, apparently. What does that mean? What is your takeaways on these hearings?
I think they're going really well. I mean, President Trump picked an all-star team. He picked a team of reformers that I think are going to go into these agencies and fight for the American people. Pete Hegseth, I think, did really, really well that day. He answered the questions. He wants to root out DEI. He wants to focus on China. He wants procurement reform. The Democrats were engaged in really partisan politics, which is a bit unusual in the Armed Services Committee for that role, but that's where we're at with the Democrats these days. And then Pam Bondi was a slam dunk. I had the honor of introducing Pam. Got to know her in state AG world. And she's going to restore credibility to an agency that's been weaponized and politicized to a degree we've never seen before, the kind of lawfare the DOJ is engaged with. So great picks. Howard Lutnick, great pick. He'll be up soon. Sean Duffy, great pick. I mean, he's got a team. And I also point out, it would be exceptionally rare, honestly, there'd be any no votes. Since Bill Clinton, there have only been 3 no votes for nominees altogether. Not nominations spiked, but just no votes altogether if you're of the same party of the incoming president. So he's picked a good team, and I think we're going to get it done quickly.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Pam Bondi is well aware of the issues at the border, as are you. You've traveled to the border many times. I was there with you once. Yeah. And do you think the Democrats are on board with what's about to take place? Because I was just stunned that so many voted against that bill yesterday, which basically said you want to deport people who've committed sexual crimes.
Yeah, I don't think they really get it. They're still a party captured by left-wing advocates that write white papers about open borders. That's the truth. Mm-hmm. That's why we got where we're at with 15 million people here illegally. And I would also prepare the audience for what's about to come when these deportations begin, which, by the way, deportations are nothing new. Bill Clinton deported 12 million people. That's been the policy of the United States forever, which is you come here illegally, you're detained, and you're deported unless you're granted asylum or something like that, but 9 out of 10 asylum claims are bogus. But what's about to come is the legacy media is going to be camped out. NBC Nightly News will be camped out looking for the one story that they can try to turn the tide. But the American people weighed in very clearly. They don't want to see this level of illegal immigration. We have 15 million people here illegally. It's a national security risk. Fentanyl's flowing across the border. The cartels, as you and I saw at the border, control the border. They've got human trafficking lanes, drug trafficking lanes into the interior of the United States. It's a big problem, in addition to the cost to taxpayers.
Yeah.
So the American people weighed in on this very clearly, and I think President Trump's going to deliver.
So what is the military's role here? Are you expecting to need the military to get involved in these deportations?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
We'll see. I think you're going to see a flurry of activity day 1, day 2, day 3 on the border. I mean, I think you're going to see a very serious effort. Yeah. By President Trump and his administration to actually deport illegal immigrants who are here. And by the way, there are hundreds of thousands of hardened criminals that were here, gang members who've taken over hotels. You know, I mean, this is a serious problem. No country would stand for this, and it's about time that we have a secure border and respect the sovereignty of our borders.
Of course. And also, you know, a focus on the military. I mean, and your role in the Armed Services Committee, I want to get your take on what we need most, because I understand that China is outmanning us in the Navy. They've got more ships, naval ships, than we do. I know there's an effort to bulk that up. Are you talking about $120 billion needed for pumping up defense in your reconciliation plans?
Yeah, I think we want to bump up spending, but we want to be smart, too. I think the first thing, and one of the challenges Pete Hegseth has that I think he's going to be able to address, we have a recruitment crisis. I mean, the idea that we had at the Air Force Academy, you couldn't say mom or dad and they had the Eyes and Ears program deterring your classmates if they were using disfavored terms like you guys or we're all just people, is totally insane. You had generals advocating for quotas. It's driving people away. I think Pete will come in, change that culture, get us back to the great meritocracy the military's always been. That's a big piece of it. We got to make sure we have well-trained men and women. And by the way, go after the 8,000 people who were fired because they didn't get the COVID shot, try to bring them back. But as it relates specifically to the military, we've got to focus on China. It is the 21st century, Maria, I know you believe this, is going to be defined of who wins this competition between the United States of America and Communist China.
That's right.
And that competition extends not just on the seas, not just on the land, but in space. So we've got to be nimble. We have to be innovative. We have to change the way the Pentagon does procurement, because we've got to be able to adapt to current situations better than we are right now. And people talk about it, but I think that's the essence of the reform movement that President Trump's bringing in with these people. We don't need the same permanent Washington insiders who go to the same cocktail parties as everybody else for the last 30 years. We need new sets of eyes, fresh blood, who are going to be change agents so we can compete for the future.
Yeah, thank you for prioritizing this. Our audience understands as well the threat that is Communist China. By the way, who came up with this stuff that you're not allowed to say mom and dad and you guys? Like, where does this come from?
The political class that's infiltrated every aspect of government. I mean, this obsession with DEI, this race essentialism, it's ultimately cultural Marxism, Maria. It means you divide the room by oppressor and oppressed. And it doesn't matter what room. It can be that recruitment room. It can be the classroom. This is a Marxist ideology that I think people are waking up, rejecting it. You're even seeing government offices at least say they're getting rid of this stuff. We just got to make sure it's not embedded and called something else. So I think Pete Hegseth and others are very committed to this. I know I am, and we're going to have a lot of oversight even into the Trump administration to make sure this stuff's rooted out.
Yeah, how disturbing. Meanwhile, on economics, Texas Senator, your colleague Ted Cruz reintroduced a No Tax on Tips Act in a bid to support service industry workers. It would fulfill one of Trump's major campaign promises. How important is this in terms of your plans in putting together your tax extension reconciliation? And do you have a feeling about this in terms of where this is going? What's your gut? Is it going to be one big bill, including the LA fire money?
We'll see. I mean, there's an argument to have two bills, to have a win on border, to have a win on energy and military early, and then make sure you get to the tax stuff, which generally takes a little bit longer. Whether it's that or one big bill, I think we're all pulling in the same direction. We want to get this done. And Bessent was right yesterday. This would be a calamity for our economy if these tax cuts expire. It amounted for people making under $100,000 a year between a 15 and 26% tax cut.
Yeah.
We can't let that go away, especially when you've seen the inflation eat up a lot of that savings and more of it, quite frankly, over the last 4 years. So we've got to extend them. I would argue let's make them permanent. Make sure we're, the small business owners that are out there, they're reinvesting in their companies and hiring people. We got to be advocating for them too.
Yeah.
But this is, President Trump won for the first time, a Republican won among voters who make less than $100,000 a year. We are a multi-ethnic working class party now. We have to fight for the little guy here. We have to fight for normal Americans who work hard every single day, who deserve to keep more of their own money. That's how we're going to have a pro-growth agenda. We open up energy production. We control spending. That's the recipe. That's the secret sauce.
Do you have an offset on that, Senator? Do you have an offset on all these new tax ideas?
Well, I would argue, obviously, the doom and gloom from the CBO about what this was going to cost us last time, we've well exceeded revenue projections on all the tax cuts.
Okay.
Right? But as I do think we're going to have, personally, I would advocate getting back to something like 2019 spending levels when President Trump was in office. We would have a budget surplus with the revenue that we have right now. That's just from a few years ago.
Yeah.
I think what happened here in Washington, people went crazy with spending during
After COVID,
and we have to have a level reset and be serious. I'm on the Doge caucus here in the Senate, and we're looking for ways to save money left and right.
Great. Cheryl, jump in here.
Well, Congressman, Andy Harris came out yesterday with his plan again, and talking about, Senator, Congressman Andy Harris came out with their idea, and this is from the House Freedom Caucus, but what he's talking about is, you have two bills, and you kind of alluded to that just a moment ago. You have two bills versus the one. I know President-elect Trump wants the one. At the same time, it is the pay-fors, which Maria mentioned, the pay-fors within it. You focus on energy, you focus on immigration, you focus in particular on the border, but then you split it in two. I mean, how do you feel? Because that's ultimately going to come to your desk.
Yeah, I would argue that we should do it in two phases. Let's get an early win on energy on the border. on some savings and then make sure. I mean, the tax cuts, there's just no way we can let them expire at the end of the year. So I think there's its own sort of shot clock with that. But like I said, either way we do it, we've got to open this thing up. I mean, you think of what President Biden just did on his way out. He locked up $65 trillion worth of revenue on offshore drilling. He just banned it. Now, President Trump's going to come in and reverse that, but that's the kind of mentality we've been dealing with the last 4 years. I've got legislation that says let's open up this leasing and use it to pay down the national debt. There's a lot of great ideas that can come forth if we actually have a pro-growth agenda.
Right.
We got to be mining critical minerals in this country. It's ridiculous that our military relies on China for a lot of the military,
it sure is.
Weapon. It's crazy. So let's bring this production back home. Let's open up our energy reservoirs that we have. We have all the energy we'll ever need right under our feet, Maria.
Yeah.
We don't need to rely on anybody else. And let's just go do it. And I think we are going to enter a golden age. I think there's a lot of optimism in this town right now with President Trump coming in. He was very clear about what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
The American people gave him a mandate to do it. So let's go do it.
Yeah. By the way, who's making these decisions? We know Joe Biden's state. Is he coming up with this idea to put 625 million acres offline?
I don't know. It's probably the same Ivy League gender studies major that writes the white papers on the border.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Who said no
totally
mom and
nuts.
dad, right? And no you guys. Here's John Lonsky.
Yeah, Senator, you know, Scott Bessent yesterday mentioned that discretionary spending by the federal government rose by an astounding 40% over the past 4 years. Do you think there's any room for cuts in discretionary spending? And would it be possible that you would basically have a freeze on discretionary spending outside of defense going forward?
Yeah, we have a real opportunity. The answer to that is yes. In our internal conversations as a Senate conference, we are looking very seriously at where we can actually reduce spending, not just control growth, but actually cut out wasteful spending. We have a very unique opportunity with this reconciliation, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 over the course of 2 years. We have an opportunity not to have to rely on any Democrats. We don't need 60 votes in reconciliation. We just need 50 or 51, right? And so we're looking very seriously. Social Security and Medicaid, they're not being touched. That's not part of the conversation. The fear-mongering you're going to see from the Democrats is ridiculous. They know they've lost working families. We're going to go fight for them. But I think we also have to show that we're willing to make these difficult decisions to reduce spending. Like I said, we don't have a revenue problem. We've got a spending problem because if we actually got back to 2019 spending levels, you know, we'd have $1 trillion surplus every year. So that's not that long ago. We're not talking about the 1960s. We're talking about just a few years ago, pre-COVID spending. I think if we march towards that, we can make some real progress.
It feels like a long time ago with all the trillions and trillions that have been spent since, Senator. It's great to see you this morning. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, Senator Eric Schmitt in D.C. We'll be right back. Stay with us.